images can also be displayed in other controls, and one of the popular ones is a label. I'm going to take a label and drag it across the top of my application here. I'm going to set the auto size to false. And I have an image I want to bring in that's 750 by 125. So I'm going to set the size to 752 by 127. So it's 2 pixels more than my image, because I am going to also add a border style of fixed single. Now that 1 pixel will count for the line of that border. Now I'm going to go to my image property here and find the image that I want to bring in. So here's one 750 by 125. I'm going to say open and say OK. And there then is my image being displayed in a label. You'll see some other properties relating to images here, including ImageLists and ImageIndex. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to use the ImageList with the ImageIndex of a label. You can do the same thing with a button. I've created another application in which the form also contains an image, and there is the background image property that you can attach an image to. The Be Aware and the Click a Button are both labels, as is this black box. This is a label that I want to show images in as the user clicks each of these 5 different buttons. So when they click the Western Honeybee, I want to see a Western Honeybee image here. We're going to use an image list to accomplish that. An image list is simply a component that contains images. Now there's a couple rules when using an image list. All of the images in that image list should be the same size. And the maximum size is 255 by 255 pixels. So if you need a larger image than that, then you need to use a picture box or just a label where you're attaching an image directly to that label. We're going to see the advantages of an image list here in that all the items are indexed, and we can just refer to the number of each picture in our image list as to what we want to display. So let's create our image list. Over in the toolbox, down in the components is the image list. And we can also look at all the Windows controls here. So alphabetized, it'll be a little further up, and there's our image list. I'm going to drag the image list over to my project. However, we don't see anything. And what actually happens is down in the system tray at the bottom is our image list control. It's not a visible control. It's happening basically behind the scenes, but it does have properties and does have methods and does have events. In the properties panel for the image list, we'll see that there's a collection, and that's where we're going to add our images. Before we do that though, we want to change the image size. Right now it's 16 by 16. This is used a lot for icons. And so 16 by 16 is how those images are going to be brought in, and then if we're displaying them at 250 by 250, be blown up and very rasterized, and they'll look horrible. So we're going to change our size here to 250, 250. The other thing we want to do is check our color depth. Now if there is transparency to these, we want to change that color depth to 32-bit. Otherwise, I'd use 24-bit. That'll save a little bit in storage. Now we need to add our images. So I'm going to go to Collection, click Add. I'm going to go find my images. Here's the folder I have of bees. I'm going to bring in these JPEG images. Now I might want to change the order of these. So I have a very first one is Be Aware title. That's going to be the default when we open this application. The little title screen there. Western Honeybee is up at the top, so I want to bring this up to be number 1. We have Bumblebee, Carpenter Bee. I want the ligated furrow bee to also move up, and the leaf cutter bee to be at the bottom. That way they're just organized according to the order of my buttons. I'm going to say OK, and now I'm going to go to my label and connect that image list to my label. So it shows me all the image list I have. This one is just named Image List 1. I didn't rename it. Probably should have named it IMGBs. And then is the image index. Now if we go back to our collection here real quick, notice there are numbers here starting with 0. Those are the index numbers. So when we come to our label and it says image index, it's looking for one of those numbers, 0 through 5 in this case. I'm going to start with 0. So there's my Be Aware title image. Now I want to code my 5 buttons to change the image by changing the index, and we'll add some text for below. I'm going to double click on the Western Honeybee button. And all we're going to do here is LBL image dot image index equals 1. And we have a label called LBL caption. Set the text equal of it to Western honeybee. Let's test this. And there's our Western honeybee. Let's code the other 4 buttons. Here's the code for those other 4 buttons, handling the click event for each of them. And in all 4 of those, I did the same thing as in that first button, just changing the image index to the image that I want to display and changing the text of the caption. Western honeybee, bumblebee, carpenter bee, ligated furrow bee, and the leaf cutter bee. Let's take a look at a couple more examples where I used ImageList. One use of ImageList is containing sprites of an animation. Now, a sprite is 1 frame of an animation. So I drew this Roddy walking, and I have 24 frames. I basically aim this at about 12 frames per second. So much less than a normal movie would be, but sufficient for good animation. I created the image list with all those 24 frames. They each have an index going from 0 to 23. And then I set up a timer that has an interval of 80 milliseconds. It's going to fire about 12.5 times a second. And the enable property is set to false. Now the timer has a tick event. And so if we look at the code for the timer, we'll talk about timers down the road. All I'm doing with the button to pause and start the animation is enabling the timer, setting the enable property to true or false, and then changing the text of the button. But here's with the timer, that every roughly 12 times a second, it's firing a tick event, and when it does that, I'm simply incrementing the Roddy index from 0 down to 23, and if it hits 23, then it's going back to 0. That's how this animation works. Let me just run this. So I'm going to click the start animation, and there's our Roddy walking. Head kind of turns towards us, and I can pause the animation, restart it. So all I'm doing there is enabling and disabling the tick event of the timer, and that tick event is incrementing the image index of my label, and all the images are stored in an image list. This is a video poker project I created for my VB.net class back in 2012. I still use this assignment today in my C# class. The form is exactly the same between VB and C#, and actually consists of 5 labels here, which are our cards. So if we play, the images displayed in these cards are coming from an image list that contains all the cards. We can look at the collection for the image list, and here then are all the cards for the deck, going from the spades to the hearts, the diamonds, to the clubs. Each of these are 140 by 194 in size, and that's the size of my labels. And all I'm doing to display the cards is randomly generating the index number between 1 and 52, and then displaying that card for that index number. Image lists are great for organizing images that are of like type, the same size, no larger than 255 by 255, and are great for things like games. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the Programming Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.